Okay, everyone. Thanks for joining today. Well, I hope everyone is getting ready for U.S. Thanksgiving and getting that kind of, we're in a bit of the wind down season. And, I've always kind of like, this is a bit of the stone wall that you hit when you're selling because you hit that Thanksgiving weekend and things get slow real fast. I know one deal I had to go through a couple years back and like we couldn't even find a lawyer. So it was difficult to even get things through. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. Thrilled to have Dave Dexter here. Both of us caught up at PropTech last week. And if you're in the business, maybe you're fresh out of PropTech as well, and just kind of collecting your thoughts and business cards and everything like that, and figuring out which emails are spam and which emails are actually you need to respond to, and figure out what you got to do here. Love to have Dave in the Getting Hell Yes. Dave is the founder and managing partner of Rev Scale Partners, a scaling revenue consultancy in working specifically, right now in multifamily, but also has other industries that you've had a lot of experience in. Right now with Highly, with Luxor, and then with the blue company, the virtual blue, and so helping out in those spaces and helping those leaders scale their companies. So that's exciting conversation. One of the things we want to cover off today, as you guys know that's listening, Getting Hell Yes is all about the psychology of buying. And kind of like, how do we as sellers meet the buyers where they're at? And how do we begin to put together a sales motion that is scalable, that can also, be representative of how the buyers are buying today, rather than kind of how we used to sell things. And that's a big, huge transition point that we'll dig in a little bit further. As you guys know, a Getting Hell Yes buyer has already prioritized their problem. They've decided that they've tried to solve it, and they may have even tried to solve it other ways and had bad luck doing that. But they're actively looking for alternatives. They're in the market. They may know more about your company than you do in many cases. And so they're seeking to understand, seeking to learn, seeking to get unblocked in terms of what they're trying to solve for. And this is the nature of these conversations. And what makes it exciting is that every leader we talk to, there's a new insight that comes from the conversation that is representative of their own experience. I think one of the things that's the best thing about hosting the show is I've had a chance to really learn from leaders in all different spaces, all their experiences, and figure out how we can get to Hell Yes problem solve for everyone. As always, this is brought to you by IRCX. IRCX is AI remote maintenance inspection software for property management. Will help you get faster work orders, faster inspections, and faster turns, all by understanding the problem prior to dispatching that trip. And if you are following us on the live show today, we'd love to get the questions that kind of pumping through. Please jump on, add some questions, and we'll answer those in real time. And as we always do, Dave, happy to transition to you for a little bit of an intro, your background. How did you get in this problem, specifically in the Rev Scale Partners? And then ultimately, let's talk a little bit about Getting Hell Yes.
Sure. Happy to join the show. Appreciate it. Background on me, I've been in sales for just a little bit. The white hair kind of gives away my years of experience, right? So background before I got into multifamily sales was in broadcast. Used to run, own, operate, and sold some radio stations I had. After that, got into multifamily. A company that was called Prime Media at that point, or Apartment Guide, or Apartment Shoppers Guide. Went by a batch of different names. Went from that to a couple other companies. Worked at Luxor One, and then with me for a while. With an entrepreneurial background, I wanted to gravitate back towards doing my own show. So I started Rev Scale Partners about a year and a half ago. Remote firm dealing with multifamily sales motions and other verticals as well. I like it because it gives me the ability to help different companies and different people move to the next level. So that's a quick and dirty background.
So the problem that they're having is that they're stuck. And where are they usually stuck?
It depends on the level. I mean, if you get, there's three different buckets, right? If a company is between under 1 million, that usually goes founder led, and they can usually scale up to that level. Between 1 and 4 or 5, the game changes a bit. The founder has to kind of bring in some expertise. They're no longer sustainable just with that one person. Salespeople and so forth. They need some go-to-market setup. Pipeline can often look like, kitchen drawer with a bunch of stuff in it, right? A little disorganized. And bringing on salespeople, putting in a repeatable structure. The next level you hit, 5 to 10 million, 5 to 8, 5 to 10. Some companies will scale without a formal process. So forecasting can be vibes. The client likes me, they're going to buy. Well, no, to steal something from, I think it was Robert at Shark Tank said this: people don't buy charm, they buy change. So just because they like you doesn't mean they're going to buy it, right? And then 10 up, sometimes leadership can become the bottleneck, right? They've got to this point, and I get it. It's their baby, right? They grew it from a baby to kindergarten to send it off to grade school. They have a hard time letting go sometimes. Territories and comp can get a little political, and they might get stuck up in process versus progress and go to the next level. So there's the 3 different buckets where they get stuck.
And do you find, like, I mean, given the experiences you've had in these companies, like, prior to this and even today, like, does it start out with this kind of conversation around how am I going to diagnose this? How are we going to start? Where are you at? Or is it very consistent at that 0 to 1 level that they're, or the 1 to 5, that they consistently demonstrate those attributes?
I think it's more of a generality than a consistency, right? Every company has unique opportunities, unique challenges, right? So those are buckets that they kind of fall into, but there's exceptions, of course, all the time. Same as with clients. There's always exceptions.
How did you get started in sales?
By accident. So I used to be, my first profession was as a photographer.
Okay.
Back in the day, hair down to here, I was that guy.
Nice.
Right? There is a picture of my college yearbook with 4 people in it. I'm one of them. 2 of the people are girls. I was a rail at like 140 pounds. People that know me can't pick me out of the picture. So it's that. So
that's funny.
My landlord at the time owned a small radio station. He said to me, "Dave, you want to be in sales, or you want to be in radio?" It's like, okay, let's do it. I had visions of, I'm going to hang out with bands, go backstage, all that sort of stuff. Well, so I got into radio sales, and no training at all, none. So I went out the first, here's your rate card, see at 5. Great, let's go get them. So spent the first few weeks seeing 50 people a day, knocking on doors and going, "Hey, do you want any radio ads today?" "No, I'll see you next week." Predictable non-results. So I started digging through the closet of the radio station, found some sales training tapes, and learned from there that education's just as important as drive. So
what were the sales tapes? What were the sales tapes? Do you remember?
Sales tapes. Yeah. And there are so many different sales methods. There's Sandler, there's Challenger, there's Medic, there's BANT, but they all have a commonality, right? I'll give you the story that I've told people 8,000 times. Some people on this, watching this probably did hear this a couple of times. I think being a good salesperson is like being a good doctor, right?
Yeah.
You go to the doctor for the first time and they go, "Dave, I'm happy to see you. Notice on the wall, I've got all my diplomas. The table you're sitting on is the finest steel. My scalpels, nobody's got them like this ever." Starts talking about his stuff, not asking about you at all. So a good doctor, why are you here? What hurts? What happened? Do you want it fixed? They'll do a diagnosis. Prescription without a diagnosis is malpractice. Presentation without discovery is sales malpractice. That's the one thing that I learned all those years ago when the hair was darker and your color. And that still holds true today, right? So there's variances on that, of course, and different changes as time went on, but got to understand what they need.
It's interesting. So, of course, like, in these roles, you read a lot of sales books, and I'm actually I'm reading Zig Ziglar's book right now. I can't remember which one, but reading it halfway through, and it's on the Kindle. So it's like, I think it's How to Get to. It's the one book these right. I feel bad. I don't remember it right now.
Sure.
I always forget the book title when I'm reading Kindle because it's just not in front of you all the time. But what's interesting about it talks about the red hair, his wife all the time in this book, how she, said no to him 6 times as he's trying to propose to her, kind of thing. But, the thing that I find interesting is that, I think I may have read most of this book, maybe 15 years ago, and then now reading it again now, I find that there's parts of the book that are they feel more relevant today than they felt 10 years ago. And this, to your point about diagnosis without a prescription without discovery is malpractice. I feel as though there's a period of time and it was probably like feels like 7 or 8 to maybe even 10 years, where it wasn't so much it wasn't so much a discovery conversation, and the discovery itself was largely fit related, not so much problem or frustration related. And I'm finding, reading Zig Ziglar's book right now, that it's actually prompting, like, and that book's been around for, I don't know, 50 years, but it's like, it's prompting a reminder of what we're actually trying to do as salespeople, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, one of Zig's great quotes that I love tremendously is, I'm probably going to butcher it, is you'll get everything in life you want if you,
as long as you
in life get what they want.
That's right. That's
close. I'm close, right? I butchered that.
It's the so, you can have whatever you want as long as you help people get whatever they want. Something like that.
That's it. That's it. You said it much better than I did. So,
and it's true, right? It's true in that.
It is. Yeah.
Like it's
100%. Sales comes down to just. Go ahead. I'm stepping on you. We got a little bit.
No. But you know what's interesting about like sales folks is it's so secrets of closing a sale. That's the one. Is that when you think about like how people characterize a salesperson in sales, it's often somebody who's talking over people, that's pushy. It's kind of like the stereotype. But it's interesting when you get into reading Daniel Pink's book, "The World Is Left-Brained" or something like that. And then there's one called "Quiet." It's about introverts in corporate, and you get into these books and you learn about that many introverts are actually better salespeople than extroverts because they're not seeking to talk over people; they prepare better. They're seeking to serve and understand. And, I find that's in your experience, have you observed that or noted that? I mean, what have 100%.
You seen? I mean, so I do a lot of sales coaching and sales training with teams, right? Because that's core. I mean, metrics and knowing what to do with them is core. So you'll find it's common, especially with a high I type personality, if we're talking in disc profiles, right?
Yeah.
They're really happy. They're real proud of their stuff. And they just want to tell everybody all the time about their stuff, right? Telling ain't selling. So if all you're doing is talking about your stuff, if this is moving, you're not learning. So real common. It's trainable though. You train people out of that. Train people to listen a little bit better. But yeah, it's a challenge. You see a lot.
So when you're going out there, and specifically Rev Scale Partners, you're talking to prospects, and they come into your pipeline, and you're vetting them and filtering for them and understanding who's kind of like a hell yes for Rev Scale. What do you find? So we talked about their different stages and kind of where they're feeling blocked. How can you filter for those that are seeking to activate change versus those that are just kind of getting some ideas?
I'm happy to help out either. Because I'll do an intro call for 30 minutes with almost anybody. And at the end of the day, Zig Ziglar, if I can help them get a couple of tips at no charge in that 30 minutes, it's a good win for everybody, right?
Yeah.
In terms of bringing on a client as opposed to a discussion, it has to be somebody that's committed to change. It's one thing to just sit there and wish for change, wish for a different thing to happen. They have to actually be committed to doing it. They have to realize that when somebody's hired, there's two promises being made. The person getting hired promises to do the best job that they can for you, and the company promises to show them how. A lot of times the company doesn't follow through on that promise. So I got to change that. Take a look at efforts and see where they're stuck. If it's fixable. There's some I've talked to that I passed on because it wasn't a good fit for both sides. Yeah.
I find that that's something that I know I've made that mistake in the past where we seek to solve a problem that we maybe are unwilling to acknowledge exists by hiring somebody who may have that experience solving that problem previously. Big gap that I often see, especially in like that 0 to 1, 1 to 5 stage, is that we feel compelled to hire people that are from previously, like say enterprise organizations. Like if I were to hire somebody from Salesforce or Oracle or SAP, like even Yardi, their probability of success is really low, because I'm not going to be able to give them the tools that they are accustomed to and the motion that they're accustomed to running. And that's, we've been tempted in the past to do that kind of hire. In fact, I've got a lot of friends that have made those kind of hires, but ultimately there's a mismatch in intention with respect to somebody who's willing to go from enterprise sales, and I mean like big 40, big 50 enterprise sales into that 1 to 5 area. They're seeking to solve a different problem, like personally, than what the startup is seeking to solve. And it creates a mismatch with kind of like internal objectives.
Yeah, there's also variances inside of companies as well. I mean, if you've got a company with an enterprise and a growth team, you coach them differently because they have different sales motions, different things they have to accomplish and so forth, right?
Yep.
So I think you have to look at that whole thing holistically. And I can't help everyone, but the people I do help, I help very well. It's going to make sure it's a two-way street for these guys, right?
Interesting. So when you find when your customers coming into pipe and they're getting their understanding of activating with RevScale, they've kind of expressed their concerns, they've expressed their blockers, they're kind of getting there, or maybe just plain frustration. Then you guys start working together. Now I'm curious. Now we'll kind of like go a second order down. When you're coaching, how often do your clients or your experience, you don't speak to your clients specifically, but like, is that clarity around what a hell yes buyer looks and feels like? Like, what is that, speaking to, you spoke to RevScale, but now speaking to the people you've worked with in your career, how often is there clarity around that?
It's not 100% clarity. I don't think it ever is, right? Again, the key things you look for is, unless somebody realizes they've got a problem or opportunity, all the wind in the world won't change it, right? They've come to that realization, desire to make the change first. If they got that, then 70% of it, right? If they're lacking that, I'm just sending a bill in return for no result, which I don't do, right? I've got to be able to make an impact.
I remember, and I can't remember which book I was reading, but they talk about like selling is actually seeking change. And so part of the job as us as sellers is to activate the change motivation or to capture it. I say capture it. I had this conversation with Joe Summers. This is back on the show back in the spring. Yeah, he's a beauty. I wish I would have caught him. He wasn't an PropTech because he had I think he had a personal conflict, but time conflict.
Yeah.
But we chatted about, historically there's a lot of conversation around creating urgency. We kind of stumbled in our conversation around capturing urgency versus creating urgency. And we kind of played with this definition that capturing urgency is more about understanding where they're at, whereas creating urgency feels like it's something that you control. We ended up landing on, we actually have no control over urgency. You can bully somebody as much as you want, but ultimately they're not going to sign, or it's not going to be a sustainable relationship if you're not capturing them in their space. How do you help people figure that out?
People don't buy because they understand your product or service. They buy because you understand theirs and what they need, right? All sales, it's going to sound like an oversimplification, but it's not. Comes down to 3 basic components. Find the problem, provide the solution, and the trickiest part of all is enabling the client to buy. That's where the sales come in. I often compare sales to, there's the art and the science of sales, right? So another story that I tell all the time, and I absolutely love it, right? Sistine Chapel. I forget who painted that. Michelangelo. Or the guy? It wasn't Michelangelo. Beautiful piece of work, right? Beautiful piece of art. So let's suppose we took you back in time and gave you the same ladder, the same paints, the same light, the same plaster, everything, and so forth. All the technical part of that job. Could you do it? No, because you're missing the art. So with sales, you've got your pitch decks, your accountable metrics, all that sort of stuff, which is paintbrushes. But unless you know the art of how to enable a client to buy, how to do a great discovery, how to find what they need, your solution, you're not going to paint the painting for the client. So that all comes down to enabling the client to buy. So 3 components that are critical.
Okay, so we've talked a lot in this show on. Go ahead. Sorry, keep going. No, keep going.
You go ahead. So
I'd love to dig
in with a client.
No, you keep going. I think we're leading each other here. Go ahead.
We have a lag, I think, because I keep stepping on you. I apologize. So if I'm able to go into a client and work with a sales team and put the accountable metrics in, the leading indicators, which are critical, you got to have that framework, but also teach and coach the reps how to work within that framework and the leadership as well. then you're going to win. If you're not able to do those things, then it's tougher.
Let's talk about, so you talked about the enable the client to buy. We've talked a lot in this show and find the problem of running a solution. Something I like to look for also is frustration. So I had this discussion in PropTech around pain points. And I said, my new argument is that pain points aren't good enough. They've got to be frustrated with what their current solutions are. Irrelevant to this part, but like this enable the client to buy. If we could explore that a little bit. We don't talk about that too much in the show. No one's brought it up specifically. Help us understand, what does enable the client to buy mean?
Sure. There are 3 levers when it comes for anybody to make any decision. I don't care if you're buying something, if you're selling something, doesn't matter. And you kind of look at it like a teeter-totter, right? On one side of the teeter-totter, you got hope for gain, positive. I want something better. The other side of this teeter-totter, you got, fear of loss. I've got to do something, otherwise I'm losing this, right? And unless that teeter-totter moves, equilibrium's not your buddy. Nothing changes.
Yeah. Sitting
right here in the center at the fulcrum is fear of change. So fear of change will keep this teeter-totter from moving one way or the other. You go to buy a car, right? You do a test drive in this car. You got the radio up, the windows down, which not really smart for a test drive, but you do it anyhow because it feels good, right? You drive along, goes, badass in this car. This leather seat feels nice. I am rocking the world. I want this. I deserve this car. Hope for gain. You get to the dealership and they slide the piece of paper across. You go, oh, I really want 60 months at $600 a month, whatever the hell this ticket is. So your teeter-totter goes from this to you're stuck. Unless the salesperson has done a great job of finding out why you want to make the decision and is able to help you reinforce that and enable you to buy, this teeter-totter goes flat and fear of change takes over and you don't move. That kills so many deals because you haven't done the right diagnosis or the right discovery to help the client move forward and they get stuck. That is enable.
In that analog, is that presenting the offer too soon?
It could be presenting the offer too soon or not correctly or without finding the real motivation. So a lot of sales reps, when they go through discovery, will ask the one question, what do you hope to get out of this? Why are you here today or whatever? It's surface. There's nothing besides that but surface. Iceberg, 10% of the iceberg is above the surface. 90% of the water, you can't see it. It's your dick, right? So, to take that analogy out, I see you're looking for a new car today. Why are you looking for a new car, et cetera, et cetera? You're going to get at least 3-4 levels deep. You find out that the old one's junk that's about to die, right? So when you get to the table and the person goes, I don't know if I can do this. I get it. I feel that, right? You enjoy the car, but you're kind of afraid of making the change.
Mm-hmm.
It happens with your family if your current car doesn't go. You move that teeter-totter again. And you're not doing it to the client. It's not manipulative. You're doing it for the client to get them past that fear of change. One of these motivators has to move.
I had this conversation. I was doing a coaching session or a speaking session 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about getting on the same side of the table as your prospect.
100%.
And it's not intention to be manipulative. It's just like, if you get on the same side of the table as your prospect, and that's your objective and goal, you tend to rethink how you're approaching the conversation. And I've been really deliberate about this in the last year. A lot from this show is just trying to figure out, okay, how can I even start the conversation so that I'm in a supporting role, not in a starring role? And I've been using this language lately, and I borrowed this from a guy named Rob Snyder, is like, what's their project and how can I help them achieve their project or their to-do, rather than introducing our to-do as a level of complication. And where it's become really useful is that now even my follow-ups, they're not really, hey Dave, are you still considering this? It's like, hey Dave, how's that project going? Did you find a way to do it other than using Iris? And if you did, I'd be thrilled to hear about it, and congratulations. If not, is it still something you're trying to solve? Because we talked about this, it was going to have this impact. Right. And does that impact still exist, or has it gone away? And I'm just finding it so much more natural to have these conversations when it comes from the same side of the table as the buyer. than as a pure seller.
Yeah, it's a difference of, one method is selling to the client, get the pitch deck and go. One method is selling with the client. It's a cooperative effort to try and solve the client's problems. If you find someone, send an email that contains just following up, just touching base, encourage that person to find something else to do for a living, right? Because that matches 99% of the rest of the emails your client or prospect gets. Follow up with intention and value.
Mm-hmm.
What you just outlined is a great way to follow up with somebody, right? Because you're looking at solving the client's problem, not your quota.
Mm-hmm.
You're solving the need for a diagnosis and a prescription, not just another patient.
But where I've been wrong in the past with follow up with value is the follow up with value was kind of like our company's definition of value and how we ROI ourselves versus their definition of value. And I think that's something that's like follow up with value sounds like it's almost a platitude and an obvious statement to make. But I'm finding what's different is that if you open the conversation as on the same side of the table with them, then your value conversation is oriented what they're trying to achieve. That person is trying to achieve, not even the company. And I know that seems obvious, say out loud, but when I look back at some of the things that we've done in the past, we completely missed the boat in terms of the actual follow-up with value for that person. And so and this is where I'm really grateful for call recordings these days, because you're able to kind of like, we get happy hours as salespeople, and you get it even worse as a founder. And we're especially vulnerable to happy hours. And so like when we take the call recording and you seek to actually find what are their quotations, what did they say specifically? Not my interpretation of it, not even my rephrasing, but how did they explicitly state their frustration, their problem, the impact? And then I want to play that back to them, because if I use my words, even if I use my interpretation of their words, I'm tampering with the results.
Yeah, I mean, one way to take a look at it is whatever the salesperson says, maybe true, maybe not. What the client says is always the truth to the client's ears.
Right.
So again, another great reason for discovery when you're in a discovery call. The goal is to keep your talk time 50% or less, because if this is moving, these aren't working. And the goal is to be a doctor for that business. Keep beating that analogy to death, but it works. It's easy, right? So unless you find out what their problem is to see if you have a solution for it, you cannot enable the client to buy. 3 steps, 3-legged stool there. So great call out.
Mike, when we talked about discovery with Mike Wolber from Apartment List, he was chatting about discovery. Like the next level of discovery is discernment, right? And he speaks about how like discernment is often about helping them discover the unknown struggle and prompting questions that are genuinely curious. Like they're genuinely curious. They come from a genuinely curious position to try and seek to understand, even have them say out loud and often they connect the dots in real time. Like they may be seeking to have a conversation about one thing, but as you have these conversations in depth and you ask, and it isn't a question about being a pest, like saying why. It's genuinely following the conversation and activating the points on that being to ask them how they articulate the problem. It's almost like being a coach, and you coach them into the questions that they are seeking to solve. And what I find really interesting is that I can go with the problem and try and like almost litigate them to our solution, but that's still not going to get them to hell yes. And that's the part that I've learned a lot in the last year, is moving away from like that litigator approach of asking them leading questions to bring them along, to asking them questions that genuinely reflect their objectives, and then making an offer to say, hey, if this is what you're seeking to solve, maybe this might help. What do you think? And then they go, well, I haven't thought of it that way before. And you go, oh, that's interesting. Why not? Well, we just didn't see this kind of technology before. Okay. Well, given that you've seen this now, and we'll do a demo, how does that change your original project, your original to-do? Does that change the way you want to do things? And then we get the feedback from them saying, yeah, no, maybe not. They go, okay, that's okay. is there anybody else that I can introduce you to that can help you get to where you want to go? Because we don't do that thing. Yeah, you should talk to, XYZ or, ABC, but we're not going to solve that problem for you. But in the meantime, what I also find very interesting is that when I give that deferral to somebody else to go solve what their core problem is, they sometimes will say, but you know what? We're not having a problem with maintenance triage, but inspections is really dragging us down.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about inspections for a little bit? And so often I found that by giving away the opportunity, it actually comes back with more discernment, more intention than how we open the conversation.
Yeah, and that's part of becoming the greatest compliment anybody in sales can get is to become what's called a sustaining resource, where you are the consultative expert in the room. If it doesn't fit what you can solve, provide someone else that can fit what they can solve. And it pays off. Go back to your Zig Ziglar there, right? It pays off in spades all the time.
Yeah.
You're not going to have a solution for everybody, but you might know somebody. I have people that reach out to me that might think they want a little bit of sales help, but they really want marketing and branding help.
Yeah.
I'm first grade with that stuff. I can do it. It's not my wheelhouse. Tony Souza. That's his ballpark, right? Or somebody like that. So yeah, refer them back to somebody that can do the job for them. 100%.
Well, especially if you're like from let's say at a 0 to 1 level where you may have marketing and sales mixed up in a single ball, but practically speaking, they're different things. And so the education of saying, hey, I can recognize a marketing problem, but I'm not the solution. I can't solve a marketing problem. So I, consider you should talk to Tony, right? About branding and marketing, right? So you can appeal to your audience. And that thing is like,
I don't know art, but I know what I like when it comes to marketing, right? So
fair.
It's kind of, I can't paint the picture, but I know if it looks good. So
yeah, I can appreciate good marketing out of the gates. So when you guys are talking to folks and let's talk about our markets, because you've got Highly that is an AI solution. You got Luxor One that is a storage packer lockage or storage and package management. And what was the third one? Sorry.
Third one was Virtual Blue. They put AI and human interaction into security cams for multifamily.
Okay. Into security cameras.
Sure. You've got an existing camera set up in multifamily, and suppose you've got a roving guard, right? A lot of communities have that.
Yeah.
Roving guard can be in one place at one time. If you've got, 5 buildings, the roving guard's looking at one parking lot. What these guys do is they put a layer on top of these cameras with AI and human interaction surveillance. They see the entire property. They're able to flag suspicious characters all over the place and so forth. Adds an extra layer of performance to the security system. Makes it easier for the property managed and gives the residents a better sense of being taken care of. That's what these guys do. Virtual Blue.
So when we think about like AI in multifamily, and there's a I wouldn't say, I don't know if it's a fair assessment given how I think people have prioritized things, but there is an assessment out there that multifamily has been really slow to adopt technology, and like it or lump it, it's what it is. And when you're talking about selling 2 AI products, how do you find that the introduction of AI, does that enable or does that kind of like add friction to the sales conversation?
It depends. I mean, big topic there, right? So AI used correctly and used to its best use is a boon. AI, if somebody puts an AI label on something, the phrase AI is overused. They put the AI label on something, think that it's a panacea. It's not. At the end of the day, it's not the T1000 yet. Arnold Schwarzenegger is not going to come make all these changes with Cyberdyne, but it works on the instructions you give it, and it works on its computer language, right? So I think it's a boon if it's used correctly, 100%. I think it's a bane if you just slap a label on it.
Yep. So that's an interesting segue. It reflects a conversation that I had, maybe even earlier today, is like talking about the AI and its relationship to data. And so like the data pieces in multifamily there's a lot of variability, I'll be generous.
Yeah.
And that variability is affecting our ability to exploit artificial intelligence to its full extent in the short term, right? So when you're out there talking AI solutions to people, there's like when we talk about it, and for our product, I have to go in and open with, this is how we solve the data problem first. And then you get this. AI AI literally is the cake out of the oven moment. It's not the egg and the flour and the water and the sugar and the milk and whatever. It's the cake out of the oven part, because like, I actually don't want to show them how the sausage is made, because I'm afraid at how they're going to actually kind of like have an intestinal ulcer around all these things that are happening.
Yeah.
Right. But ultimately, what we talk about, what we solve, it really is a demand intake and a categorization and classification of the data in ways that we think is different than the other alternatives that are out there today. Right. The people that buy from us, they also agree, and that's why they have customers. They're our customers. But like when you're talking about AI, how do you are people actively looking for an AI solution? Like, I've got to buy something that says AI in it before 2025 is up, or are they beginning to, and this is what I hope for, that they're reconciling that AI is just a power drill to a screwdriver, and I still need to make sure I'm screwing the right screw with the right bit. Otherwise, I'm just going to strip it faster. Like, what are you finding in the conversations and the sales calls that you're reviewing?
More the second, and great analogy, great call out. So people do not buy what your product is or how it does it. They buy what it does. So great framework is to talk about the problem you solve, because that's what the client cares about. And then tell them how you solve it. Because the second part doesn't really matter that much to them. It matters more to the person that owns the company and solves the problem. So AI, again, I think the phrase is overused. It's been beating the ground. Everything's AI anymore, right? Is a great component to a solution, but it's not the solution. It's how the sausage is made, to use your phrasing there, right? So, I don't think anybody's going, hey, I want an AI solution. They do go, I want to fix this problem, whatever it takes.
But it's when I look at like the panels from PropTech, they were all AI forward.
It's the new buzzword.
It was a buzzword, and they were all power tool related, to follow that metaphor. But like, they were all like talking about more power tools, and it wasn't about like AI and operations. It was all so generic that I felt that like we're putting the wrong thing forward versus the results and outcomes. Because wouldn't it be great if it didn't say we use AI or we use whatever ML or anything that we talked about from a technology perspective, but it's like the outcomes are, how do you get to faster work orders? How do you get faster revenue? How do you retain residents? And then it's kind of more topical around like, this is how we did it. We had this problem that was recurring. Our conventional solutions weren't working for us. By the way, we don't have enough people, or we're moving things off site to our operational excellence, or whatever the circumstances are. And you kind of case study the conversation versus like jumping to the solution. Because I feel like people walking around there are just kind of like, sigh. I don't want to hear about another AI solution that doesn't relate to an outcome.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's leading with AI. I mean, AI is a great component. Again, it's a great tool, right?
Sure.
It's kind of like selling ditch digging services by saying, we employ 6 foot tall, 250-pound guys to dig these, and then we give you a ditch. It's like, they don't care. Do I get my ditch? Right?
Yeah.
And that's how you do it. AI is how you do it. It's important. It streamlines things. It makes things so much more efficient if it's used correctly. But it's not the problem solver. It's the way to get to the problem solver. So great topic.
I was just doing our roadmap, and on the way back from PropTech, kind of like flashing back in the last 3-4 years, looking back the next 4 years. And like, one of the things I wanted to make sure when I was doing it was framing it in terms of problems. Because even as a founder, when I look back at our previous roadmap exercises, it was all about the features we were going to deliver by the end of the year and how we were going to do that. But I found, and even as a founder, I found a certain amount of clarity in my thinking by being problem centric in terms of our frame. And so like, when it comes back to selling, like, now I know that I'm building something that's a problem to a persona, and that persona has expressed that problem to me repeatedly, and maybe the technology doesn't even exist right now, but we can begin to frame a roadmap that has logical things that I can sell all along the way that can then convert into realizing that overall vision. And that overall, now I'm not, because I find, like I talk to founders, and especially like my vision of the world, I feel like saying 2 feet in the brakes right now. Your vision of the world doesn't matter to anybody. So stop hallucinating with delusions of grandeur. Stop it. It's your understanding of the customer's problem, the size, scope, and scale of it all. And that should frame your understanding of how to solve the problem. But your vision of the world is really kind of like irrelevant. We don't get a vote as sellers on the vision of the world. It's the buyer's vision of the world that is the thing that we need to anchor towards.
Yeah, we'll go back to what we discussed early on. Whatever the seller says is suspect, whatever the buyer says is the truth in their eyes.
Right.
So their view, their vision rules, right? Now you can attempt to, if their vision needs some assistance to change for better productivity, as a good coach or consultant or whatever you want to call it, you help them to shape that change. Because obviously bringing in a consultant, a fractional partner, whatever, for change of some sort. And unfortunate, the clients I'm working with are all very receptive to different ideas to change and advance their business, which is fantastic. Not everybody's at that point. So it's helpful. That's another thing I look for as well.
So bringing back the enabling the client to buy. So like, are there specific frameworks that you find are consistently, or things that are consistently missing when you kind of look back at your client base, your history, your career, that is like something to anchor on and for people to think for and look for with respect to, because you've gone to the point where you found the solution, you've created motivation around or a fit between your solution and the problem. Sorry, you found the problem, between your solution and the problem, and you're getting towards that buy stage. And but maybe better yet, how do people get in the way of helping the customer buy? Let's start there and we can work back to how they are enabled.
Introducing stuff that doesn't matter, that's deflective to the current situation. Talking about things that don't matter to the client. Pitch decks and demo decks are the bane of my existence. So customized decks, I love those, right? Because you'll find a lot of pitch decks. I call them pitch decks, and it's not a compliment. So are generic. They have a lot of crap in there that the client doesn't care about.
Yeah.
Why defocus it? If you've got a client trying to solve 3 singular problems, you should talk about 3 singular problems at the end, right? Now, you want to start just like a sales funnel, right? You start wide with your discovery. You start coming down to the center. This is what needs to be solved and why. What's preventing it from being solved, and how do you want to solve it? Yeah. That's what you talk about when you do your presentation. A lot of people try and just throw the kitchen sink at it with everything their company has, whether it matters or not. That's number one. 2, I think if you don't enable the client to buy, one of the things that gets in the salesperson's way is they just didn't do a good discovery. I'm a firm proponent that everything is won or lost on discovery. All the parallels around us. We talked about doctors. Let's take a look at a courtroom drama TV show. They will spend 90% of that on the interrogatories, the depositions, and the cross.
Yeah.
The final summation or the presentation, if glove don't fit, you must have quit. It's that. It's just small. So, I don't know who's going to get that reference in the audience because it was a while ago.
I do.
But, that's the presentation, is that much. If you do a great job in your discovery and your planning, then you help the client to buy. The other thing that gets in people's way when they sell is they sell to, and they look at it as, how do I get the client to buy? Do I say this when they say that? And how do I kind of manipulate the time frame? It's terrible. Your job is to help the client move forward with a solution to a problem that they have. And everything you do assists the client to that. It's not something you do to somebody. It's something you do for someone. It's a mindset shift that's small, but it's major. Zig Ziglar. I keep going back to your book there, right? That's the core of it. That's the core of it, man.
And it's funny, like there's been thousands of sales books that have been read and read and written since, but ultimately there's not too far off in that book, right? In terms of the core servitude. And a really good quote was given me by a friend of mine, Jeff Osberg. He's been in sales forever. And he talks about like how like selling isn't helping and helping. Selling doesn't help and helping always sells, right? And what's interesting about that kind of statement is that helping, and again, this is like every husband on the planet probably knows this story. Like helping is not my definition of what you need. Helping is figuring out your definition of what you need. And so like 100%. That's the part that we often overlook.
Sales is like, it's like an outstretched hand, right? If you're putting your hand out, waiting for the client to put something in it, you're selling to. If you're putting your hand out, giving the client something to help, you're selling with. What's in your hand? That's what you do.
I like that. I like the way you put that. Because this is something that I discovered recently around like the buying cycle, the buying process, is that this gets into this whole frame of like project or to do. What's there to do? What are they faced with? What are their options, et cetera? And then getting into how we manage that sales cycle is I've actually kind of begun to use the language like, hey, Dave, look, this is your project. And if it's okay with you, we'll manage it like a project. Does that make sense? Yes. Perfect. Okay. So then, and if no, and I got to ask why. Like, why is it not okay to manage like a project? Because then ultimately I'm going to defer to, okay, here's your project. Here's your milestones. Here's your date to complete. And if you frame it as a project, it becomes very simple to get to a date that you got to do things by. Because they're going to go, well, I got to have this done by, US Thanksgiving. Otherwise it's not going to get across the finish line by Jan 1. Okay. Let's mark that constraint out and capture that like a project. Yeah. But it's not my timeline.
It's something, again, you're not doing to a client, you're doing it for the client, because if they need it done by next date, you're just back timing everything to make sure you can do the job for them as they need done.
Yeah.
And that's the lens you have to look through, right? It's the manipulative sales type that gives sales a bad name, like time salespeople. It's not hammer.
But it's often how we're taught to do it, right? And so, like, do you find like, and I actually had this conversation with I was coaching a founder the other day, and I was like, well, can I review some of your sales calls? And they said, I don't record my sales calls. People, do you think it would be okay with that? And I was like, you don't record your sales calls. That is if anything has changed sales in the last 4 years, it's call recordings.
100%.
And I found that if you're not recording your calls, you are actively omitting the truth.
100%. Because your memory will fade. You mentioned it earlier in the call. Salespeople are optimistic all the time. They get these feelings, the client liked me, they're going to buy. Well, when you see it in black and white and printed page, maybe not. It's the only way, Dr. Heal Thyself, is to go back and look and see what you did, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the tools out there like Firefly, which I use, and, Zoom and Google Meet, all record calls, can give you a synopsis too. What's your talk time? What were the pain points delivered, right? You learn something every time you record a call. It's great.
Do you find that, like when you take a look at what was it like before? Like, what was it like before call recordings from a sales coaching and understanding perspective?
Yeah, you kind of have to rely on written notes. And for me, my handwriting, is terrible. I mean, Indiana Jones, if I wrote in my map, would say, screwed up, staying home. Right? It's terrible. You lose your context. You lose all your nuances without call recording. One of my top recommendations is always somebody record your calls. That's great. You'd end up, you'd have a salesperson talk to their sales manager, talk to their, C-suite person, talk to their founder. And with no ill intent, you're going to have some telephone game going on there. These things change, right? Call recordings are fantastic. So that's what it was like before. It was dubious.
It was all conjecture.
A lot of conjecture, a little more hope slides in there, and the more and more optimistic. Everybody's going to know their own story.
I heard the saying hopium. Hopium's my new word. That's my word for 2026. Hopium.
Salespeople are drug addicts. It's like opium. I think it's established. But I think call recordings are fantastic. And there's some software, I feel like Firefly, has got a paid version and a free version. So if you haven't got the budget for it, your company's not buying it, right? It rides in your browser. It'll join your calls. It's a no-brainer.
No excuse.
There's no brainer.
There's no excuse. When you take a look at like the folks that you're selling to, and why are they? So for starters, what have they usually tried? Like when they come into you and they're looking to go into RevScale, have they, or do they even know where to start?
Say that again. You cut out a little bit at the end.
Sorry. When folks come to you seeking support in their sales function, what have they usually already tried?
There's a variety of things. I don't know if it's already tried or realized they need, would be a better frame on that, right? One of them realized that they needed more training for their salespeople and wanted an outside view. Because when you get ingrained into a company, the process of a system and so forth for so long, you can become that horse with the blinders on. And just it's always great to get an outside perspective, whether it's long-term or short-term, to run some ideas behind. So I serve as a sounding board for some of these folks. An area of expertise in terms of sales process and sales coaching and training, and they're different, right? Go through calls with people. So some realize they need that. Some realize they need a structure, because they realize what got you there and get you to the next level. What got you here ain't going to get you there, right? So they need the systems put in. And some people are just, a lot of founders are founders because they're visionary, right? They got the Steve Jobs type, right? They got the picture. They're very smart. They're not sales leaders. So you get it to a point in a company where it's no longer time to go to the general dentist. You got to go to the endodontist. And so they bring in, I can't fix teeth, by the way, just put that out there, where they bring in endodontist or a specialist, right? So those are some commonalities.
And do you find that like not everyone buys? So what kind of objections do you get?
I don't know if I get more objections. I don't really get a lot of objections by the time we get to this point, because I don't do a ton of outbound. A lot of my client base comes through referral or social postings and that sort of thing. Not so much objections, but not yet. I haven't enabled them to buy. My fault. Not yet realizing that there's an opportunity to improve their process, improve their sales, improve what they're doing for the clients and their sales teams and their people. I haven't enabled that yet. So if somebody doesn't buy from me, that's on me. I've missed the third step.
It prompts a question. And this is kind of one of my, I do not want to answer the question for you, but like when you go through a loss review and you see we lost on price or relationship, what's your first move?
It's a generalization. It's never about the price. No. It's about what they perceive what they're getting for the price. If you sell on price, you lose on price. I tell people, and I've told them at every company I've been at, I'll tell them now, I am not the cheapest dog in the fight. I am the best dog in the fight. Now we can go over why. If you're looking for cheap, I'm the wrong dog. So are my companies, right? They sell based on what they accomplish, not at a price tag that's hanging on a string. A relationship can have something to do with it. This is a stolen quote from another guy. I fully admit it. Business moves at the speed of trust. They won't buy if they trust you, and they won't trust you. They know you. So relationship has something to do with it. They've got to believe in you as a person, as a resource, as somebody that can solve their challenge. I think most of the time, if a deal is lost, someone did a better job of finding the value for the client. And it wasn't me, wasn't them, whoever. That's why most deals are lost.
How do you respond to when? No, keep going. Sorry, keep going. How do you respond to
people don't necessarily, yes, budgets matter, prices matter. If everything was price related, the purpose of a car is to get you from home to the grocery or home to work. That's what it does. If that was why people bought cars, everybody would have a $5,000 Ford Fiesta in their garage or their driveway. They don't. People buy 70, 80,000, 100,000 for the love of God, dollar cars. Why? Because of how they feel about it. So, bigger topic for the time we've got left, but people buy based on their emotion, how they feel about the change. Then they back it up with features and benefits and price. If you get a price objection and say you lost it in price, 80% of the time, you lost it because they didn't feel you did the job. Longer topic than 2 minutes.
A very important thing to kind of like wind down on is that humans, you can argue with your point all day long, but ultimately there's a decision-making, there's a decision-making biology that you're arguing against, that the caveman brain is decision center, like the limbic part of the brain is where you make choices. And the neocortex, the modern brain, is where you complicate choices. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When we want food, it doesn't matter really the price.
Yeah.
Is it taste good? Is it going to satisfy my hunger? Right? So starving man does not pay attention to price tags.
Yeah. No, they don't.
Right? So,
yeah. No one negotiates the fireman.
That's right. So, but yeah, whole other topic. We go hours on the emotional decision process. But
it's and for everyone as a takeaway, it's fun to kind of like really lean in on that and ask yourself those questions, because you're going to get better as a salesperson if you start understanding how those emotional decisions are made, right? And being able to anchor in on those. So, couple more questions. What's that? Couple more questions to close out. What if you go back and look back at your career? This can go into people that you're coaching even today. What's a piece of advice you like to give people as they're kind of like embarking on their sales career, or maybe if they're stuck in their sales career?
Don't be afraid to fail. So, I got all these crazy stories, and there's probably some people on the call that have heard this one before, but I'll repeat it because I absolutely love it. So, baseball player. If a baseball player is a 300 hitter, they're doing pretty good. People want their autograph and they're making some money and get some trophies and stuff. So the 300 hitter is, when they go up to the plate, their only damn job is to hit the ball and get on base. That's it. They don't have to look pretty. They don't have to do anything else but just get themselves on base. 300 hitter gets up there and does that 3 times out of 10, fails miserably at their job 70% of the time. Don't be afraid to swing and a miss. Be afraid of not to swing. Just be a 300 hitter. That's what it's all about. I love it. That's my advice. Don't be afraid to fail. Be afraid not to try.
The standing strikeout. Be afraid of not swinging. I love it. And then
pain of regret, of coulda, woulda, shoulda never goes away.
Well, and if you don't swing, it's impossible to learn. And I believe, at least my view in the world, is that the reason why we're here today is to go on a journey. It's not to achieve a destination. The destination is actually often disappointing, but the journey that you got there isn't a story. In the amount of novels and movies and narratives and lore and legends that are anchored in the journey, like the Raiders of the Lost Ark. The Lost Ark was just a thing to anchor the story on. The rest of the story is about getting there. And so if you don't swing, you just have no chance of getting there.
No risk, no story. So
that's right.
that's what it is.
Who should we talk to next?
Lucas Bourgeois. So I'll tell you a little bit about Lucas. So I had the privilege of, back when I was at RentPath in 2011, hiring Lucas for his first sales job in multifamily. The guy was an assistant leasing agent, I think. And I've always been a believer, you hire attitude, you train aptitude. This guy came with bundles of attitude. Mm-hmm. So he came in pretty green and just pulled himself up by the bootstraps. He was a voracious learner. The guy had drive like, I don't think I've ever seen anybody with this much drive. He went from selling, there in Jacksonville, Florida, to running a couple of markets and decided he wanted to broaden his career. He's now one of the principals over at Get 100. Fabulous sales talent. One of the best hires I've had the privilege of my career of making. Call Lucas.
I can't wait to chat with him. Outstanding.
He's great.
Thank you.
He's fantastic. Yeah.
Well, Lucas, you're on point. We're gonna get a hold of you and chat with you.
He's the man.
This has been incredible. So I'll quick summary for everybody that's listening today.
Thanks.
So, and in terms of problem you solve around the people that you're working with, I think that was interesting, but there's way better gold in this conversation than the problem, like getting into enabling the sales cycle, right? Enabling buy. And I think there's probably room to talk about working backwards from that. How do we work backwards from enabling the buy? Equilibrium is fear of change, right? Be scared of not swinging at the plate, right? Those are three different life lessons that all require some unpacking. But I think that, things that I'm learning from that are very valuable. And so I appreciate you sharing your wisdom and experience, especially we're getting into a year that selling is not going to be easy. And so there is going to be a separation between those that understand it and those that are trying real hard. And if you're out there trying real hard, you have the attitude, then perhaps there's a chance to pause and take a look and listen to your calls and see if there's an opportunity for improvement.
Yeah.
And if you're, alligator earsing everything, you're not going to necessarily get to where you want to go.
That's right.
Well, this is outstanding. Thank you, Dave. Great seeing you at PropTech. And happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. And Dave, hang tight for a second. Take care, everybody.
Appreciate you.
That was wonderful.